Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us Ray Dalio's principles to dive into.
Yeah.
It's quite the book, I have to say.
It is. It is.
But we are going to help you unearth some of those real nuggets.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some of the insights from this treasure trove.
Mhm.
And think of this deep dive as a crash course into Dalio's worldview.
Yeah.
How he approaches life, work, all of that.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. It's very comprehensive.
It is.
We're going to try to boil it down.
We are. We're going to focus on, I think, some of the core principles that he really espouses in his book, that he uses in his personal life, and also in his work at Bridgewater.
Right. And I think what's really interesting about Dalio's work is that it's not just about finance.
Yeah.
Right. This is really about decision making.
It is, yeah.
About relationships, understanding your own brain. So it's applicable to
a lot of different things.
Pretty much everyone, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's dive in, I guess, and we should start with Dalio lays out his hero's journey kind of throughout the book.
He does.
He starts as this kid from Long Island who starts trading at 12 years old, which is just wild to me.
Yeah.
But, even at that young age, he talks about how he loved betting against the consensus.
It's really interesting, 12 years old. I mean, most of us are, I was thinking about baseball cards and things like that.
Yeah.
But he's already looking at the market and thinking, well, how can I, zag when everyone else is zigging?
Yeah.
And so I think that, his interest in market dynamics, even at such a young age, really foreshadows his later focus on macro trends.
Yeah, and speaking of macro trends,
he
talks about how the 1971 Nixon shock, when the dollar went off the gold standard, really piqued his interest in currency history and, almost like a pivotal experience.
Yeah, for sure.
That had such a global impact. The ramifications of that are still being felt today, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it seems like that experience solidified Dalio's belief that understanding these historical patterns is incredibly important.
Yeah.
That, something, just because it hasn't happened in your lifetime doesn't mean that it can't happen.
Right.
And so for Dalio, this understanding history became a really important key in being able to anticipate what might happen in the future.
Yeah, and this brings us to what Dalio refers to as his abyss.
Ooh, yeah.
Which is a time of devastating failure, I would say.
Absolutely.
So 1982, he predicts this economic meltdown. And he's so wrong, he's so far off the mark that it almost bankrupts him completely.
He just wipes him out.
Talk about a crucible moment.
Yeah. That experience, though, was absolutely pivotal for shaping his worldview, imagine going through that, being that wrong about something. It forced him to confront his own fallibility and really kind of instilled in him this deep-seated fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that this is really where his focus on understanding mistakes and seeking the truth, even when it's really painful, originates.
Right. So this trial by fire, almost,
it is.
That he goes through and he emerges wanting to never be that wrong again.
Yeah. And you'd think that, having gone through that experience, he'd be, set, right? You'd be good.
Right. He learned his lesson.
But years later, even after achieving success at Bridgewater, he has another reckoning.
Yeah.
He receives brutal feedback from his employees at Bridgewater, which forces him to confront some serious weaknesses as a manager.
Yeah, so this incredibly analytical mind, so good at dissecting market patterns, kind of needed a crash course in human psychology, it sounds like. Yep. And this is what leads him to develop this concept of radical transparency.
Radical transparency, yeah. And what's crucial here is that he doesn't see this as just some management technique.
Right.
He views this as a fundamental principle for all relationships. So it's about being radically truthful, even when it's uncomfortable, as a way to grow personally and professionally.
So I'm trying to imagine this playing out in a workplace.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like?
So imagine a workplace where everyone's strengths and weaknesses are openly discussed and evaluated, kind of like a sports team.
Interesting.
So to facilitate that, Dalio actually created baseball cards for employees.
Wait, hold on. Baseball cards? What do you mean? Literal baseball cards?
So these cards would rate their skills like you would rate baseball players.
Got it.
So pitching, hitting, fielding, you get the idea.
Okay, so that's a very unique approach, I gotta say.
It is, but it's all part of this creating what he calls believability-weighted decision-making.
Believability-weighted decision-making.
Mm-hmm. In a nutshell, this means that not all opinions are treated as equal.
Okay.
Right. So think about it. In any team, some people have more experience,
right,
more expertise than others.
Right.
And so he's saying that decision-making shouldn't be like a democracy where every vote carries the same weight.
Yeah.
It should be more like an idea meritocracy.
Interesting.
Where the best ideas win, regardless of who they come from.
Right. So not shutting down dissent necessarily.
No.
But more about channeling all those perspectives in a way that leads to a better outcome.
Exactly. Exactly. And remember, Dalio is all about confronting reality head on, right? Even when it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to another interesting aspect of his approach, which is his fascination with how the brain works.
Okay.
So he talks about this interplay between emotions and logic. Argues that we all have this what he calls like a lower level you driven by emotion, and then a higher level you that's capable of more rational thought.
Okay, yeah, I can relate to that.
Right.
We all have those times where emotion takes over, hijacks your decision making.
Right. And Dalio is I think he's saying that understanding this internal struggle is actually key to personal growth.
Okay.
That it's about learning to reconcile your feelings with your thinking, to train that lower level you to align with your long-term goals.
So even when your gut is telling you to do one thing, to be able to, have that mental discipline to act according to your principles.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And, this brings us to what I think is one of the most fascinating parts of Dalio's story, which is that his system, his models, actually predicted the 2008 financial crisis.
He saw it coming.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what's really interesting is that he faced resistance from a lot of policymakers who were kind of stuck in conventional thinking.
So, if he predicted it, why didn't people listen?
That's a great question. And it goes to the heart of what he calls the blind spot barrier.
Blind spot barrier.
Okay. So it's this idea that we all have biases.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Based on our experiences, our worldview.
Yeah.
That can prevent us from seeing things clearly.
Yeah.
And so he argues that you have to seek out diverse perspectives and really engage in thoughtful disagreement to overcome these blind spots.
Otherwise, I guess we're just doomed to repeat the same mistakes, right?
Yeah. And it's not just about, these big global things. Dalio also talks about how he had a personal health scare.
Oh, wow.
And he sought out multiple opinions, even when they contradicted his initial diagnosis.
Yeah.
This open-mindedness may have actually saved his life.
Wow. So being open to being wrong.
Yeah.
Really central to his entire philosophy.
It is. And this ability to kind of see things that others miss.
Yeah.
To anticipate what's coming. It's a recurring theme in Dalio's story. So he actually goes on to predict the European debt crisis in 2010, again demonstrating his ability to recognize patterns,
see things that other people aren't seeing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about Dalio's background, his philosophy.
We have.
But I'm curious, how does he actually put all of this into practice?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we're going to dive into right after a quick break. So we'll explore his 5-step process for achieving goals.
Okay.
The unique tools that he's developed at Bridgewater, and how all of this can be applied to your own life, even if you don't run a massive hedge fund.
All right, sounds good. Let's take a break.
Sounds good.
So we're back and ready to really dig into the practical side of Dalio's principles.
Yeah.
We've talked about his philosophy, his journey, but I want to know how he actually puts all this into action.
Well, Dalio is all about systems, right? So he actually has this 5-step process that he believes can be applied to achieving any goal, whether it's in finance, relationships, personal growth, whatever.
Right, break it down for me. What's step 1?
Step 1 is all about setting clear goals.
Oh, okay.
Which sounds pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
But Dalio emphasizes that it's not just about setting A and Y goal.
So not just I want to be rich or
exactly.
I want to be happy.
No, it's got to be more specific than that.
Okay.
He believes your goals should be deeply connected to your values, to what truly excites you.
So things that you actually care about.
Yeah. Things that get you out of bed in the morning.
Got it.
Things that align with those core beliefs.
Okay, so you set those clear goals. What's next?
All right, so once you have those goals in mind, step 2 is identifying the problems that are standing in your way.
Okay.
And this is where his radical truth comes into play.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't want you to sugarcoat things or shy away from the hard stuff.
Okay.
He actually views problems as opportunities for growth.
Embrace the obstacles, don't run from them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once you've identified those problems, step 3 is diagnosis.
Diagnosis, all right.
This is about getting to the root cause of the issue,
Okay.
not just addressing the symptoms.
Right.
So this might require some introspection, right?
Yeah.
Being honest with yourself about your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And seeking out different perspectives.
And this is where, what we were talking about before, the believability weighted decision making.
Exactly. Yeah.
It comes into play.
Yeah. So it's not just about blindly accepting anyone's opinion. You want to seek out those who have the knowledge and the experience to give you those valuable insights.
Okay. So you've got your goal, you've identified the problems, you've diagnosed them. Then what?
Then step 4 is about designing a plan to overcome those problems.
Okay.
And Dalio's a big believer in visualization here.
Okay.
He encourages you to imagine your plan as a movie script, almost,
Interesting.
with each step laid out.
So don't just wing it. Have a plan.
Have a roadmap, exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, step 5 is, we'll do it.
Do it.
Put that plan into action.
Take action.
Push through to achieve that outcome that you want.
But it's not just about blindly following the plan.
Right. You need to monitor progress, make adjustments as needed,
Yeah.
Never lose sight of the big picture.
So it's this constant loop of setting goals, identifying problems, diagnosing, designing, doing.
It is, yeah.
And this can apply to any area of life, right?
Dalio uses this process for everything.
Really?
From managing his company to philanthropy to, personal decisions.
Wow.
He believes this framework can help anyone achieve their goals.
Okay, so that's his 5-step process, but I'm curious about how he actually implements this at Bridgewater.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have a framework, but it's another to put it into practice, especially in a large organization.
Yeah, well, Dalio being Dalio, he created tools to systematize this approach.
Okay.
So, for example, they have this digital tool called Coach.
A coach, like a personal trainer for decision making.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
It guides employees through this 5-step process.
Right.
Offers advice and principles relevant to that situation.
So it's like having Dalio's wisdom right there in your pocket.
I got it, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
And it gets even more interesting. He also has this tool called Dot Collector.
Dot collector. Okay, what is that?
So imagine your team is trying to decide on a new marketing strategy.
Okay.
Dot Collector allows team members to actually rate each other's skills
Okay.
in different areas.
Got it.
So it might reveal that, Sarah has the highest believability in digital marketing, while John's expertise lies in brand strategy.
So you're using data to inform who has the most influence on a decision?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not about creating a rigid hierarchy, but about recognizing that different people have different strengths.
Right.
And by using data to identify those strengths,
Yeah.
you can make more informed decisions.
Interesting. So it's not about who shouts the loudest,
No.
but it's about, who actually has the experience here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the knowledge to back up their opinion.
Exactly.
I like that.
And Dalio, is constantly emphasizing that this whole system is about separating emotion from logic, even when it comes to evaluating people.
Okay.
He wants to create a system where the best ideas win, no matter who they come from.
A level playing field.
A level playing field, exactly.
Okay.
But this whole system, you can imagine, requires a lot of buy-in.
Right.
You need a culture of trust and transparency.
Yeah, for sure.
And Dalio himself acknowledges that it takes time for people to adapt to this.
So it's not a quick fix, it's a long-term thing.
It is.
You got to really commit to this approach.
You do, yeah.
And what I find really interesting is that Dalio doesn't just apply these principles to business, right? He talks about philanthropy, family life, even ocean exploration. I think he mentions at one point.
He does.
So he views this as a universal approach to life.
He does, yeah. It's about aligning your actions with your values, striving for excellence in everything you do.
That's a pretty inspiring message, I gotta say.
It is.
But I do have to admit, some of this stuff, like the dot collector, the baseball cards, it seems a little radical to me. Can this actually work for everyone?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And Dalio acknowledges that, Not everyone needs to create a mini Bridgewater.
Yeah.
He encourages people to adapt his principles to their own unique circumstances.
So take what works for you and leave the rest.
Exactly, yeah. It's about developing your own set of principles to guide your decision making, your relationships, your pursuit of goals.
And this all kind of comes back to like that hero's journey theme that he has.
It does, yeah.
Like, he's not just sharing his story, he's inviting us to, go on our own journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Self-discovery, growth, all of that.
Be more self-aware.
Yeah.
Confront those weaknesses.
Become the best version of ourselves.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Right. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've explored Dalio's worldview, his process, his tools. But I think, the most important takeaway here is that underlying philosophy of radical transparency, thoughtful disagreement, making decisions based on believability, not just hierarchy.
Exactly.
And it's a challenging approach for sure.
That is.
But I think it could be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, if you can implement it effectively, it can make a big difference.
Right. So it's something to think about for sure.
Lots to chew on.
Lots to chew on.
Lots to chew on, yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap things up, let's try to distill some of the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Yeah.
And, how you, the listener, can actually apply these things to your own life.
Right. Let's do it.
We've spent a lot of time with Dalio's principles now.
Yeah, we have.
And it's pretty clear that his ideas, while they come from finance, they really extend beyond investing.
Yeah. It's almost like he sees these principles as this universal toolkit that you can apply to almost anything. To decision making in governments, in philanthropic organizations, even in our own personal relationships.
I can see how that would be appealing. This idea of having a system for making better decisions. But I gotta say, some of it feels pretty intense.
It is, yeah.
Even intimidating.
Yeah.
Radical transparency in all my relationships. That sounds like it could backfire, maybe.
Yeah, and Dalio acknowledges that this level of honesty can be really tough.
Yeah.
It can be uncomfortable, even painful at times.
Right.
But he stresses that it's not about being brutally critical, or insensitive.
Right.
It's really about clarity, directness,
yeah,
and always aiming for better understanding and communication.
So less about tearing people down.
Yeah.
More about building each other up through honest feedback.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this isn't something that you just switch on overnight.
Right.
He actually suggests it takes about 18 months.
Wow.
For most people to adapt to that level of open communication.
Okay, so it's a process.
It's a journey.
Yeah. What about this whole believability weighted decision making thing? I'm still kind of wrestling with that.
Yeah.
It sounds like only the so-called experts get to have a say.
Yeah, I understand that concern.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that Dalio isn't defining believability based on titles or seniority.
Okay.
It's about demonstrated expertise.
Okay.
A proven track record.
Right.
Of making good judgments in a specific area.
So someone fresh out of school could actually be more believable than a CEO.
Exactly. Yeah.
When it comes to something like social media or something.
Yeah, social media trends, the latest technology, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And Dalio actually argues that this approach is more democratic.
Okay.
Because it prioritizes the best ideas, regardless of where they come from.
So it's not about who's the loudest.
No.
It's about who actually has the data.
Yeah, the experience to back it up.
Back it up. Yeah.
And even this system isn't, set in stone.
Okay.
Dalio emphasizes that you have to be willing to learn, to reassess.
Yeah.
He even developed that tool, Dot Collector, to gather data on people's believability over time.
So as people gain experience, their input changes.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a dynamic system.
Dynamic, yeah.
It's not just
it's not static.
Yeah.
It can evolve.
Okay. This whole idea of systematizing decision making is so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like Dalio's trying to build a machine almost.
Yeah, a process.
Yeah, a process for making better choices.
Yeah, and he's really transparent about the fact that it's an ongoing experiment. Mm-hmm. He encourages readers to take what resonates with them, adapt it to their own context, and even contribute to refining these principles.
So it's not about blindly following like a dogma or something.
No.
It's about using these ideas as a starting point.
Yeah, a springboard.
Yeah.
For your own approach.
I like that. That's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most valuable things here.
Yeah.
Dalio challenges us to be more self-aware, to question our assumptions, to develop systems for making more thoughtful decisions.
Exactly.
And that applies to all areas of life, not just work.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Well, I think Dalio would say, go back before you go forward.
Okay.
Think about your own values, your goals.
Yeah.
The systems that you use to make decisions.
Where are your blind spots?
Where are your blind spots, exactly.
Yeah.
Who are those believable people in your life that you can turn to?
For advice.
Yeah. For advice, different perspective.
And remember, it's a journey.
It is. It is.
Learning, improvement.
Continuous.
It can feel daunting.
Yeah.
But like Dalio shows us, it can lead to amazing results. And I think even more importantly, fulfilling work and strong relationships, they're not mutually exclusive.
They're not, no.
They can actually reinforce each other.
Yeah.
And I think striving for excellence in both of those, that's the real legacy of Dalio's principles.
I think so.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
We went deep on Ray Dalio's principles.
We did.
Explored his approach to life, work, everything in between.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you a good foundation for understanding his worldview.
And sparked some ideas for how you can apply these principles
to your own life.
And we would love to hear from you, the listener.
Yeah.
What resonated most with you?
What are you going to apply to your own life?
What are you going to try?
Yeah, what are you going to experiment with?
Yeah, what are you going to experiment with?
Even if you disagree with Dalio, what did you find most thought-provoking?
Keep those wheels turning.
Yeah.
And until next time,
happy diving.
Happy diving.